Welcome to Securing Asterisk or FreePBX with APIBAN, and it's great to be here at AstroCon 2021. I feel like I was just here a moment ago, but welcome to AstroCon. I'm Fred Posner, and let's talk about securing Asterisk or FreePBX with APIBAN. Today, I'm going to start off by talking about me for a moment, just a quick moment, and then we'll discuss what is APIBAN, how APIBAN works, and how to integrate APIBAN with your system, such as Asterisk or FreePBX. So let's get right into it and start off with who I am, or who am I? I'm Fred. My name is Fred Posner. I'm based in Florida. I've been using Asterisk for more than 20 years. I'm a consultant with LOD.com and the Posner Group. I'm an honored member of the Kamailio project, and I love this community. I love the open source community and extremely grateful to be part of the open source RTC community. This community has been there for me from hurricanes to lending helping hands to whatever help is needed. This community is truly one of my favorite things about what I get to do every day. And with that, if you need to reach out to me, my Twitter handle is Fred Posner. My favorite method of communication is using Matrix, and I'm at Fred at matrix.lod.com, and my contact information is at qxork.com. On to the real stuff. What is APIBAN? Let me tell you, APIBAN is not fail to ban. And I say that because I don't like fail to ban. I really, really don't like fail to ban. Now, I know that some people love it, and that's okay. There's different strokes for different folks, and everything is great with this world. If you're happy with fail to ban, that is absolutely fantastic. I don't like fail to ban. Now, the reasons why I don't like fail to ban is that when I've noticed it in production, sometimes there are issues with memory and CPU. So those are my two major issues with fail to ban. I can't have an impact to my systems from security. Security needs to help my systems, and if I need to offload it or find a different way, but I cannot lose RTC, CPU, and memory through fail to ban or any other system that is doing the same job that fail to ban would do. So my thought was there had to be a better way. And my first way of approaching this was actually writing a Perl script maybe 10 years ago. And it's still online. It's on my GitHub if anybody wants it. But I wrote a Perl script that was much better using CPU and doing basically the same thing. It would review your messages, look for failed registrations or invites that hit the default and went somewhere else, and it would grab those IPs and then block them in IP tables, and then would actually rotate the log so that your log would get, you would know exactly what time it ran and everything like that. And it ran much more efficiently. So I switched from fail to ban to the Perl script. But the two other major problems I had with fail to ban weren't addressed by using a Perl script, and that is that it's reactive. I'm only reading logs and going from there. So the only things I'm blocking are things that have actually attacked me. And by the time they attack Asterisk or FreePBX in this case, you've generally sent a response, so they know you're a PBX. And it only works on a single box. So if I block it on one Asterisk node, I've blocked it on exactly one Asterisk node. And all my other nodes are still need to be attacked in order to get blocked. Now, some of my minor issues was that I could never remember the commands on how to unblock an IP. And so it was more of an annoyance. And I didn't like that it messed with some chains. And again, I haven't used fail to ban in a little bit, but when fail to ban would launch, I noticed that some of the chains that I might have been using in IP tables would get removed or replaced. And that was not something that I ever wanted. Now, again, though, if you love fail to ban, Like if fail to ban is your way, that's okay. And even if you do love it, it's reactive and it works on a single box only. So Bob won't block what attacked Alice. And so that was my main reason in coming up with APIBAN. And APIBAN started over drinks at Kamailio World. And let me say this, if you haven't gone to a Kamailio World, you are missing out on a great conference. Not that this isn't a great conference. I love Asterisk. Asterisk or Astricon. Astricon is one of my favorite conferences I go to, along with Kamailio World in Berlin. So if you haven't gone to Kamailio World, please look into it. It's fantastic. So some of us were talking about being able to share data from these SIP attacks. There's some modules within Kamailio that make sharing of information kind of easy. And we were thinking, well, we're all getting attacked. And so wouldn't there be a great way for us to share this information and preemptively block traffic from even knowing that we're out there? And we all thought it was a great idea, but we were all also busy with lives. And so nothing ever happened. And, you know, come the next Kamailio World, we talk about it again and say, yeah, that's a great idea. And then we'd meet at Astricon and we go, oh yeah, remember that idea, and nothing would happen. So at the end of 2018, I found myself with a little bit of extra time, and lo and behold, APIBAN was born. And the thought of APIBAN was that you could get the IPs that you need to block from an API. So using an API to see what I need to ban, APIBAN. And it was born since most of the PBXs, let's say Kamailio, OpenSIPs, FreeSwitch, FreePBX, Asterisk, all of these support curl. The thought that was a simple API or curl statement could be beneficial to us. So the basic thought was that when you put out a PBX on the internet, you're going to see some unwanted SIP traffic. It's just a matter of time. Just a matter of time before you get attacked. Oh, look, there's one now, right? So I put a PBX on the internet, some bad guy's going to find me. It's that simple. So the thought was, well, if I could put any PBX out there and some bad guy's going to find it, I could put honeypots out there. And with some honeypots getting the traffic, that would help me learn the bad guy. And of course, the more honeypots, the better. So we put out a lot of honeypots, and we can collect and share this data so that your PBX can connect to APIBAN and block these IPs before they hit you. And that's the basic way of what APIBAN is. Now, how it works is that we use honeypots to get the IP addresses of SIP, unwanted SIP traffic. Now, we only use honeypots, and we really want good data, good, clean data. We don't want accidental registrations or, you know, fat-fingered passwords or people trying to make carriers look bad. We don't want poisons. We don't want anything. So we use honeypots, who should never, ever receive SIP traffic, ever. And when detected, that IP address is kept in our system for 7 days as active. So an IP address hits us, we then keep it as an active attacker for 7 days, and then it phases itself out, and it can be re-added sometimes within the minute, but it will be re-added you know, once it's the 7 days are over and it attacks again. And then all of the active IPs are returned via an API call. And the API calls are very, very simple. The two main ones that would be used for what we would use to block IPs are just get functions. So we would use band, which is just a get function, and it brings groups of 250 IP addresses at a time, and it returns the IP addresses and a control ID. And then you can use that control ID to get more IP addresses. The control ID is basically a timestamp. And then we can also use a check call that would allow you to check individual IPs as needed. So you don't have to just say, okay, I want to block everything. You could check IPs one by one if you'd like as well as they hit you. And a simple example would be you go to APIBAN.org/API with your API key and band, and you'll get a 200. You'll get a 200 back with all of the IP addresses listed, as well as a control ID. And if there are none, you will get an 400 back with no new bands as the IP address and the ID of none. And again, you can send that control ID so that you want to know, okay, well, I had all the IPs that were active since this time. Now send me it any IP address since this control ID so that you could just add to the ones that you are blocking more efficiently. And then if you wanted to just check an IP address, you know, here's my API key, here's a check for the call, and here's the IP address. So for example, check /1.2.3.4, say that 4 times. And then you'll get a 200 if it's blocked, or if it's not blocked, you'll get a 404. So a 200 means, yes, I know this IP address. A 404 means I don't know it. And in a nutshell, you go to APIBAN.org, you get your API key, and you can start using APIBAN. APIBAN is provided by LOD.com. It's a free service. It costs you $0. Free as in beer, although I read something where maybe we shouldn't be using free as in beer anymore. But anyway, it's free as in beer. So LOD.com provides the hosting and the cost of it. There's also contributions from members of the community. Ivan Yarko has been amazing with providing some honeypots, as well as he has a great project, and I'll link it at the end of the presentation. I'll show you where you can get some more information. But he goes through some of this data that we get from the honeypots and has created a searchable way so you can see some of the user agents and things like that. So he's working on correlating information from the data, and LOD provides this service again at a cost of $0. Now, more importantly, how would you integrate APIBAN into FreePBX and Asterisk, for example? There are 2 main ways of doing this. So the first method is that you can use the API. On the APIBAN.org website, we have an example of how this would be done, for example, in Kamailio. And the full API documentation, I gave you, 2 slides that were very quick examples, but the full API documentation is available on APIBAN.org. The second way of doing this is to use a client, which is the best method for Asterisk, FreePBX, and any of those types of systems. And what that does is there's a open source client, there's a Go client, and there's a Bash. I really recommend the Go client instead. It integrates with iptables on your system. And so you could just run a cron job that says, okay, every 2 minutes, every 4 minutes run, or every minute, whatever makes you happy, go and run this API call. And then it would preemptively block within your IP tables the addresses that are active within APIBAN. And the source code for these clients and the clients themselves are available on the Posner GitHub. So if you go to github.com/Posner/APIBAN, you can see the clients as well as download and install. And there's instructions. Try to be as verbose as possible with, well, not as possible, but as verbose as open source is. Let's talk just a little bit about the Go client. I'm really liking Go. So I'm someone that wanted to use Perl forever, but that also shows how old I am. So Go is really impressive in terms of how quickly it processes information. It's very efficient, very small footprint. The Go client for APIBAN also does an auto flush every 7 days so that your IP tables is not growing exponentially there. So it keeps that under control. Generally, there's only 5 to 800 IP addresses at max. And so, you know, when you start getting a ton of different IP tables records, you know, if you had thousands and thousands, you can actually slow down your system. So, you know, it keeps it very optimized by flushing it every 7 days. You can choose to compile this Go client yourself, but we also already have compiled versions for Linux and Pi, most Linux distributions, as well as Pi, up on the GitHub themselves, as well as simple instructions for installing it. And again, you know, it will handle itself. You basically set it and forget it, and you put it on there, and it will block you know, the IP addresses of that we know about. So anything that we know that is attacking servers and scanning servers and sending bad traffic, we will preemptively help you block it in your system. The installation couldn't be simpler. You just create a folder. So the example that we use is usr/local/bin/APIBAN. So create that folder, download the APIBAN IP tables client, which is actually called APIBAN IP tables client because I am incredibly imaginative with names. You then download the config.json, which is the config in JSON. You update that config with your APIBAN key, and then you give that client execute permission. And you could also build the client yourself if you wanted to. You don't have to use our pre-built one, but you know, it makes it simpler. And we try to know our audience. Some of the audience here would have never built an item in Go, so they're just happy looking at the code and would rather just download it and run it. And I got that idea from our friends at the Homer project. Worked for them, works for me. And you run it, and that's it. But actually, wait, there's more. Liz, about a week ago, in honor of the 20th anniversary of Camilio World, we launched a local IP tables-api from APIBAN. And so this is available at github.com/Posner/IP tables-api. It is a very, very simple API. And I've underlined this twice because of how simple it is. It's just a very simple API that allows you to manage a local chain in IP tables. It works with IPv4 and IPv6. So based on the IP address that you send to this API, it will either block it in IP tables or IP6 tables. So it will detect that it's a valid address. If the address is valid and it's IPv6, it blocks in IPv6. Otherwise, it blocks in IPv4. And, you know, you would just do something as simple as curl block IP, curl unblock IP. And then if you wanted to flush everything, you could do curl flush chain. An example of how you might use this in Asterisk using PJSIP, for example, would be, you know, wherever you have, whether it's international calling or something, you might say, oh, look, this IP, and, you know, I could use the remote address channel from PJSIP. So this IP address just tried to do something bad. So let me block it and then log that I blocked it. And it's that simple. So again, it's just using curl statements to help you. With Asterisk, there's no log reading or anything like that. You could incorporate it with something like a simple log reader or whatever you wanted. The goal here was mostly with something like Camilio to help preemptively block systems from getting a response, you know, and then saying, okay, well, IP tables is such an efficient way, since it's kernel based and everything, is such an efficient way of blocking traffic to Asterisk because it's doing it, you know, at a different OSI level there. So it blocks it, it saves your CPU and memory, and it just makes it really well. And as I said much earlier, I personally never could remember all the commands needed for fail to ban. So this just does simple block IP, unblock IP. And if you go to the GitHub there, and again, the GitHub is up right there, github.com/Posner/iptables-api. If you went there, there's much more detailed and verbose examples, even though I'm just giving you get examples here. There are, you can use a post to add, you could use a delete if you wanted to. So if someone was more apt to writing something to integrate with it, it's all yours. The goal of the product was to do something very simple from command line of Asterisk or Camilio or FreePBX or things like that. Simple ways to integrate that to block on your system. The same negatives occur here, though, in that this is just blocking it on one system. Now, before I get into questions, and I know that this wasn't the longest presentation in the world, but before I get into questions, I do want to say that APIBAN, and in this case, iptables API, are just one tool. And you should never just rely on one tool. You know, you should always have a multiple approach to however you can provide security for yourself. So, for example, if you don't have to be wide open to the internet, don't be. Don't be at all. You know, the best way would be an allow list of just certain IPs that can reach your system. And then within those IPs, you can block, you know, using APIBAN, and you could use APIBAN in conjunction with fail to ban as well, because APIBAN will automatically re-add its chain for people that are running the both. That was a submission or an issue brought up by David Duffett, a friend of Asterisk, to say the least. So he noticed that fail to ban would remove, when you started fail to ban, it would remove your API ban chain. And so API ban automatically, every time it runs, makes sure that its chain is there. And if it had been deleted, it resets and starts and pulls all the IP addresses that it needed to from the beginning. So it's smart enough to, the client is smart enough to handle the negative actions that fail to ban might take against it. And so it can work more harmoniously with fail to ban. And, but it will also, by preemptively blocking any items from hitting you, it will let fail to ban run much more efficiently, because it doesn't have, you know, huge amounts of logging of attacks to go through in theory. So hopefully that will actually improve performance of fail to ban by blocking things that should never reach your system anyway. So again, please use APIBAN and iptables-api in conjunction with just good best practices. And with that, my name is Fred Posner. My contact information is qxork.com. You can get great information and your free APIBAN key, and you can get multiple keys, however many you need, at apiban.org. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, and I will also be taking questions starting now. So thank you so much, and I hope you're enjoying Astricon.